What happens when a billionaire, betrayed and broken, is brought back to life by a healer with a painful past of her own? Nathan Cross had it all, until the people closest to him poisoned more than his body. Maya, the woman who was never supposed to stay, ended up becoming his greatest salvation. But healing isn't easy, and love comes with a cost. Their story will break you, mend you, and make you believe again. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that speak straight to the heart. The San Francisco penthouse stood like a crown on the skyline, but Nathaniel Cross hadn't stepped outside in 6 months. Once a titan of the tech world, he now lay still beneath imported linens, his frame gaunt, muscles wasted from disuse. The city buzzed beyond the glass, unaware that one of its brightest stars had burned out in silence. Sunlight filtered in through half-drawn blinds, catching on dust motes that danced in still air. It illuminated nothing. Not the man in the bed. Not the truth he refused to face. Mrs. Banks, the housekeeper who had remained loyal through Nathan's rise and collapse, entered quietly with a tray. She placed it gently beside the bed, her gaze hovering over him, lined with the ache of someone watching a loved one fade. "You need to eat something, Mr. Cross," she said softly, her voice firm but kind. Nathan didn't answer. He hadn't spoken much since that October day, the one when his life collapsed under the weight of betrayal. He had returned home early from a tech summit in Berlin, a day earlier than expected, only to find Juliet, his fiancée and PR director, in their shared apartment, entangled with Colin Drake, his oldest friend and COO. Their laughter had echoed through the penthouse before he opened the door. It was the sound that haunted him most, not the affair, not the betrayal, but the laughter. It had mocked him, unmaking everything he believed about loyalty, love, and legacy. The fallout was instant. Juliet gone, Colin fired. The company's stock plummeted after confidential files mysteriously leaked online. The media labeled him unstable, paranoid, unfit to lead. Doctors ran every test imaginable when he began collapsing without warning. His limbs grew weak. His heart pounded without cause. Every scan came back clean. Every blood panel said he was fine. Some said it was psychosomatic. A few hinted at breakdown. Nathan fired them all. He wasn't crazy. Something inside him was broken, yes, but not imaginary. That morning, as Mrs. Banks adjusted his pillows, she said something different. "The new nurse will be here in an hour." Nathan stirred slightly. "Cancel it," he rasped. "Another charlatan with oils and incense?" His voice cracked, bitter and exhausted. "Not this one," Mrs. Banks replied. "She helped my sister's boy. The doctors gave him 2 months. Now he's working construction." Nathan scoffed. "So what? She does voodoo?" "She's a specialist in integrative medicine, and she's not asking for permission. I already hired her." The finality in her voice made him blink. In 15 years, Edith Banks had never crossed him. But something in her gaze, equal parts worry and defiance, made him pause. Exactly 60 minutes later, the private elevator chimed. Nathan, with great effort, sat upright for the first time in days, a black cashmere blanket draped over his legs. His once commanding posture now slumped under invisible weight. Mrs. Banks entered first, her eyes scanning the room as if bracing for judgment. Then she stepped aside. A woman entered. Not what Nathan expected. No white coat, no clipboard, just tailored navy trousers, a crisp white blouse, and calm, steady eyes that seemed to take in everything. The filtered light, the tray of untouched meals, the trembling in his left hand. She set a leather bag on the chair but didn't sit. "I'm Maya Brooks," she said. "Before we begin, you should know I don't do quick fixes or bedside miracles." Her voice was low, touched with the smooth cadence of the South. Nathan stared. There was something grounded about her, something infuriatingly calm. "You're the miracle worker then?" he asked. She shook her head. "I help people remember what their bodies already know how to do, heal." He smirked faintly. "And your plan is?" "To stay close," Maya said simply. "To make this place livable again, and to make you want to live in it." Nathan opened his mouth to argue, but then a sharp, sudden pain ripped through his chest. His breath caught. Maya was already there, hand on his wrist, eyes locked with his. "Breathe with me," she said. He did. And for the first time in 6 months, something inside him moved. Not pain, not despair, something else, something dangerous. Hope. The Tahoe estate was far removed from the chaos of San Francisco, nestled among towering pines and a stillness so absolute it bordered on sacred. Nathan hadn't stepped foot here in years. The last time had been for a retreat Juliet had insisted on, an ironic attempt to reconnect, as she called it, though her eyes had never once left her phone. Now the same rooms felt haunted, not by her, but by the man Nathan used to be. The one who believed loyalty meant something, that love was safe if earned. That man had vanished with the click of a shutter. One leak, one betrayal, and the world devoured him like wolves. Maya moved through the space like she belonged there. It unsettled him at first. She opened windows without asking, lit bundles of dried herbs he didn't recognize, rearranged furniture with a grace that felt more ritual than design. Nathan watched from a recliner as she replaced blackout curtains with gauzy white drapes, letting the mountain light pour in. It was too bright, too real. "Planning to redecorate?" he asked, his voice dry. "In a manner of speaking," she replied, adjusting the plants she'd brought in, lavender, rosemary, something sharp and citrusy he couldn't name. "Your body needs to know it's safe again. The space you live in tells it what to feel." "Mine feels like it's dying," he said. Maya turned, met his eyes, and for a moment he wished she wouldn't. There was no pity in her expression, just clarity, sharp as glass. "That's because your body's been under attack for months." He frowned. "You think it's physical?" Every specialist said. "I'm not them," she said simply. "And I don't diagnose based on paperwork." She approached with a small kit, asked for his hand, and to his surprise, he gave it. Her fingers were warm, steady, confident. She felt for his pulse, her gaze intent. Then she pressed lightly beneath his jaw, behind his ears, along pressure points he didn't know existed. "What are you looking for?" he asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Patterns, tension, what's talking that you've been trained to ignore?" "And what do they say?" "That someone broke your trust so deeply, your body thinks it's still at war." Nathan looked away. "I'm not broken." "No," she said softly, "but you're bleeding internally, and it's not just from heartbreak." Later that night, while Nathan tried to sleep, Maya sat at the long oak dining table, surrounded by open books, vials, and a laptop. Something about his symptoms nagged at her, especially the pattern of his collapses, the fatigue, the tremors that didn't align with emotional trauma alone. She returned to the medicine cabinet in the guest bathroom, where Nathan kept dozens of supplements and prescription bottles. She examined each, eyes narrowing on one unlabeled amber bottle tucked behind a row of sleep aids. She slid it into her pocket without a word. The next morning, Maya handed him a mug of warm water with lemon and turmeric. "Start here, then we'll talk movement. I'm not going for a jog. You're going for a walk, across this room, then another tomorrow, and by next week down to the dock." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "What are you, a trainer now?" "I'm your guide. Out of the pit," she said calmly. "But I don't carry people." Each step that day felt like a betrayal of the comfort his bed had offered. But he took them. Maya's voice was steady behind him, offering nothing but direction and occasional dry humor. That night, as the fireplace flickered low, Nathan couldn't sleep. He wandered into the kitchen, finding Maya with a mug in hand, barefoot, wearing a thick cardigan that swallowed her frame. She looked up, but didn't speak. He broke the silence. "I tried to kill myself, the night after I fired Colin." Her eyes didn't widen, she didn't gasp, she just waited. "I didn't go through with it," he added, "but I thought about it, really thought about it." Maya stepped closer. "You survived that night for a reason." "Not sure I believe in those." "I do," she said, reaching gently for his hand. "And I think your story isn't over, but you have to start living it again." Nathan closed his eyes, letting her warmth steady the tremble he hadn't realized was still there. And in that moment, the house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt in transition. Like him. The air in New Orleans was thick with memory, of jazz and rain, of roots and spirits, of loss and healing. Nathan stepped off the plane and immediately felt it press against his chest, humid and fragrant, as if the city was trying to breathe life into him. Maya watched him quietly from the car window as they drove past neighborhoods with brightly colored houses and stoops lined with rocking chairs. She hadn't said much since they left Tahoe, but her eyes flicked toward him often, searching, measuring. She brought him here because she said his body had healed enough for the real work to begin. Because sometimes, to rebuild, You had to return to where something started, even if it wasn't your place. The cross name meant nothing in Treme. No one here cared that he'd once been worth billions or had his face on magazine covers. Here he was just a man with tired eyes and invisible wounds. And strangely, that brought him peace. They arrived at a small shotgun house shaded by crepe myrtles and potted herbs. The front porch creaked as they stepped onto it. The scent of basil and sage thickened the air. A hand-painted sign beside the door read, Mama Joe's Healing House. Maya didn't knock. She simply walked in, and Nathan followed, feeling oddly like a child meeting a grandmother he'd never known. Miss Josephine stood at the kitchen stove, humming low, wearing a wrap dress and a crown of silver curls. She didn't turn when they entered. "So this is the boy," she said, her voice rich with age and knowing. "Looks like a man, but still carrying boy wounds." Nathan blinked, unsure whether to be offended or moved. "She sees through everyone." Maya whispered, "It's why I brought you here." They stayed in a spare room lined with books, plants, and sunlight. Over the next days, Nathan moved through a rhythm he didn't understand, but somehow needed. Morning walks under the oaks, midday teas that smelled like fire and flowers, conversations with Miss Josephine that felt less like therapy and more like being unraveled. One night, she handed him a bowl of thick, fragrant stew and asked, "What you still carrying that doesn't belong to you?" He didn't answer right away, but later in the courtyard he told Maya, "I was 12 when I realized I'd never be enough for my father. He built his empire and expected me to worship it. When I built mine, I thought maybe then I'd matter." Maya didn't say anything. She just slid her hand into his and let the silence settle like balm. The next day, a package arrived for her, an envelope of lab results from the supplement sample she'd taken. She read it in the backyard, her eyes scanning, then hardening. She came inside, calm but with fire in her voice. "Nathan," she said, placing the paper before him, "you weren't imagining it. Your body was being attacked." He stared at the results. The words organophosphates detected blurred slightly. Poison? A slow one. Trace amounts, enough to mimic stress-related illness, enough to ruin you. His jaw clenched. "Juliet, she had access, so did Colin, but I don't want assumptions, I want truth." Maya's voice was steady, but beneath it, rage coiled like a snake. Nathan rose from his chair. The old fire, the one that had driven him to create, to conquer, stirred in his bones. "I have a private investigator in New York," he said. "I want to know exactly who tried to bury me." She nodded, but held his gaze. "Not for revenge, Nathan. Not unless you want to start bleeding again." He looked at her, really looked, at the steadiness in her, the way she'd helped him come back from the edge not by pulling him, but by walking beside him, and in that moment he realized it wasn't about punishment, it was about reclaiming what was stolen. His truth, his voice, and maybe, just maybe, his heart. The gala shimmered with gold and ego, the kind of room Nathan Cross had once ruled with ease. Crystal chandeliers cast a flattering glow over everyone, disguising ambition as charm, deceit as elegance. Tonight, he wasn't here to reclaim his title as Silicon Valley's golden boy. He was here to reclaim something far more sacred, his narrative. He stood at the entrance of the Waldorf ballroom, in a perfectly tailored black suit, Maya beside him in an emerald gown that made the room dim around her. She walked tall, unshaken by the murmurs that rippled through the crowd. Rumors had been flying for weeks, about Nathan's miraculous recovery, about the mystery woman by his side. The gossip hadn't fazed her, but the fact that tonight might bring them face to face with Juliet and Colin, that was different. "Breathe," Maya said softly, placing her hand just above his wrist, feeling his pulse. "You're not the man they left behind." He met her gaze. "No," he said. "I'm the man they tried to bury, and I lived." As they made their way through the crowd, whispers followed. People stepped aside, some with admiration, others with curiosity, and a few with undisguised malice. Nathan smiled politely, shook hands, made brief conversation, but his eyes never stopped scanning. He found them near the champagne bar. Juliet in scarlet silk, her posture regal and icy. Colin beside her, lean and smug, holding a glass of scotch like it was a throne. Their eyes locked across the room. Juliet's smile froze when she saw Maya. "Well, this should be fun," Nathan murmured under his breath. They approached like a storm breaking through still air. "Nathan," Juliet said smoothly, Her voice sugared venom. "It's been ages." "Not long enough," he replied, equally calm. "And you must be the healer," she said, turning to Maya. "What do you charge, by the hour or by the miracle?" Maya's gaze didn't flinch. "I charge nothing for the truth. But the lies? They come at a cost." Juliet's smirk faltered. Colin stepped in, his voice oily. "Let's not turn this into a scene. We're all adults." Nathan tilted his head. "Then let's talk like adults." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "This is a toxicology report from a lab in New Orleans. It confirms I was poisoned over several months. The compound was an organophosphate, slow, nearly undetectable." He handed it to Colin, who glanced at it, confused. "And this," Nathan continued, producing a second sheet, "is a record of supply chain access for the supplements I was taking. Only 2 people had administrative control over ordering them." Juliet's face turned to stone. "Shall I go on?" Nathan asked quietly. A crowd was gathering now. Executives, journalists, investors. They smelled blood. Juliet opened her mouth, but Maya stepped forward first. "You tried to destroy him," she said, her voice even, "and you almost succeeded. But healing doesn't just return the body. It sharpens the soul." And Nathan sees clearly now. A sharp voice cut through the crowd. "Mr. Cross, is this a public accusation?" A reporter held up a recorder. "No," Nathan said. "This is a warning. For anyone who thinks truth can stay buried." He turned to Maya. "Let's go." They walked out, hand in hand, leaving behind murmurs and a scandal ready to bloom. Backstage, Nathan collapsed onto a bench, breathing hard. Not from illness, from release. "You were brilliant," Maya whispered, kneeling in front of him. He looked at her, his voice raw. "You saved my life." "No," she said, cupping his face. "You just finally believed it was worth saving." And in that quiet moment, beneath the noise, the power plays, the headlines, they were just 2 people, heartbeats sinking, a man finally free, a woman finally seen, and a love no one saw coming. The sea stretched endlessly beyond the cliffs of Big Sur, waves crashing in rhythmic thunder below the glass balcony. Nathan stood barefoot, the salt wind teasing strands of his hair, his eyes fixed on the horizon. This was where they had come to disappear. No press, no boardrooms. No ghosts, just him and Maya, tucked inside a secluded coastal retreat where time seemed to melt with the tides. Inside, the fireplace crackled. Maya sat curled on the wide sofa, legs tucked beneath her, reading a weathered book of poetry. A mug of tea steamed on the table beside her. Nathan watched her through the sliding door for a moment, unaware, serene, utterly present. He never imagined a woman like her would become his anchor. She never imagined she'd let someone anchor her. It had been 2 weeks since the gala. Since the public unveiling of a truth long buried. Since Juliet and Colin's empire of sabotage had unraveled under the weight of evidence. The world now knew the truth. Nathan Cross hadn't fallen from grace, he'd been pushed, and he had risen anyway. But victory hadn't come without cost. For days after the confrontation, Maya had withdrawn slightly, not out of anger, but something quieter. Nathan sensed the weight she carried. She had come into his life to heal him. But now that he was whole, what place did she hold in his future? One evening, as the sunset bled into the ocean, he found her on the deck, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the darkening sky. "Are you leaving me?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. She turned, startled. "What?" "You've been quiet," he continued. "Ever since the gala, I can feel you pulling back." Maya sighed, lowering her gaze. "I didn't come into your life to stay, Nathan. That was never part of the plan." "Well, plans change," he said, sitting beside her, "especially when 2 people fall in love." She hesitated. "You were vulnerable when we met. You needed someone to hold you up. But now you're standing again. You don't need me." "I don't need you," he said slowly, taking her hand, "because I'm broken. I need you because I'm alive now, and nothing about that life makes sense without you in it." Her breath caught. "You mean that?" He nodded. "Maya, I don't want to be the man I was before. I don't want boardrooms and billion-dollar acquisitions if I have to go home alone to silence and glass walls. I want mornings with you. I want tea and poetry and annoying herbs growing on my balcony. I want to build something with you." She looked at him then, tears filling her eyes, not from sadness, but from the terrifying beauty of being seen. "You really think we can have that?" she asked. "We already do," he replied. "We just have to choose it." Later that night, as they lay tangled beneath linen sheets, The wind outside humming against the walls, Maya whispered into the quiet. "I've been offered a position," she said, "in New Orleans, a center for integrative healing, a chance to build something lasting." He turned toward her. "And?" "I told them I'd only take it if I could bring someone with me." He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Good, because I was planning to ask if you'd take me wherever you go." They fell asleep that way. No declarations needed, no rings, no dramatic gestures. Just two people who had crossed impossible divides to find each other. In the weeks that followed, they packed up their pasts and drove cross-country together. Laughing, arguing about playlists, stopping at roadside diners, kissing in gas station parking lots. They arrived in New Orleans under a heavy summer sky, a storm brewing in the distance. But they didn't fear the storm. They had weathered far worse, and come out not only standing, but standing together. And in each other, they hadn't just found healing, they had found home. Sometimes the most profound healing doesn't come from medicine, therapy, or time. It comes from connection. Nathan's journey reminds us that even the most powerful among us can be brought to our knees by betrayal, illness, and loss. But what truly matters is what we do after the fall. Do we stay buried beneath shame and fear, or do we dare to reach for something new, something real? Maya didn't just heal Nathan's body, she helped him confront the parts of himself he'd locked away for years. And in doing so, she had to confront her own fears of being needed only in moments of crisis, of being left behind when the healing was done. But together they discovered a truth many of us forget. Love isn't found in grand declarations or picture-perfect lives. It's built in quiet spaces, in shared pain, in choosing each other again and again, even when it's scary. This story is a powerful reminder that vulnerability is not weakness. It's the doorway to transformation, and that sometimes the people who enter our lives unexpectedly, the ones who challenge us, see through us, and love us anyway, are the very people we were waiting for all along. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments. Where are you watching from? And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another story that stirs your soul. See you in the next one.